are you doing, Ariane?
Hey Jeff, it's great to see you. Great to
Oh,
be
it's
here.
great to have you here. We're so excited. We just love working with you on so many levels here, and we've done a lot of these lives together. It's been a lot of fun. So we're going to do some cool stuff today. I know we're going to do some playing. We're going to do some teaching, talk about some of the new cool stuff you've got going on, and appreciate everyone tuning in. So for everybody that's tuning in, we thank you for showing up. Please drop where you're from in the chat. You can put that there. We'll announce sort of all the cool places that everyone is watching from. Also, don't forget to check in. There's a link there to check in for the road trip. We'll give away a $100 gift certificate at the end of this. So make sure you check in. And for sure, go to the tip jar. You can leave Ariana a tip there, and she appreciates it. We're looking at her TrueFire educator page right now with all of the cool courses she's done at TrueFire. She's got 3 courses. She's done live events. So very cool stuff there. Please stop by there and check that out as well if you're a fan of not only amazing bass playing, but really good teaching, some really cool concepts. And that's the thing that I think I really dig about all the stuff you do, Ariana, is that you just have a cool way of breaking things down and making things sort of understandable, right? So everybody can sort of dig in and play what you're showing them. So let's do a couple things. I'm going to let people sort of chime in with where they're from and do that. But we could talk forever, but I always like to get right to playing. My theory is less talk, more rock. So let's start off and let's have you play something for us. Let's do a tune.
Okay, I'll be happy to do a tune. How about a little Stevie Wonder for you?
Yeah, I love a little Stevie. Yeah,
Yeah.
awesome.
Thank you.
Very
Beautiful.
cool. So I think a couple things that strike me on that tune. What a great, I mean, love that song, right? And of course, love Stevie Wonder. What's not
Yeah.
to love about Stevie Wonder? But so, how, when you're thinking about arranging a song like that, for solo bass, and
Yeah.
obviously you're thinking about maybe the looper and some things you can do. But how do you start that? Where do you start off with your, process there? How do you get to that point?
Well, I got inspired by Victor Wooten, who does a beautiful solo tune on, I think, Isn't She Lovely? And a couple of other, Stevie tunes. And I watched that and I was just like, my God, these, when you have a melody that's just so stands on its own, you can do anything with it. And, I just decided to give that tune a try, and it was one of those moments where it just fell into my lap. Like the whole first part just kind of came by itself. And I think if I wanted to sort of backwards engineer what I did, I just want to make sure every part is clearly separated, maybe with, because it's just one instrument, right? So I have to come up with, harmonics and, touch tapping and those sort of techniques to give it a different sound. So it's not just bass, bass, bass. You always have to be careful not to be muddy, stay out of your own way, but I still wanted to use the entire range of the bass. So play the first melody up high, then maybe go down, to give it a little bit of a variety. So those were some of the things that I was thinking about.
Well, yeah, it was a beautiful, beautiful
Thank
arrangement of
you.
it, and certainly you you do a lot of stuff with a looper, so you use the looper in a lot of different ways. That same thing. Obviously, if you're playing, you're the one instrument, so being
Yeah.
able to stack sections like that. How long have you been doing that? When did you first get into actual looping stuff?
Well, it's a bit of a fun story because when I started dabbling with solo bass, I got madly inspired by cats like Michael Manring, Steve Lawson, Jeff Schmidt, and I just sort of on my own started tinkering a little bit. But you have to be careful as a bass player because people see you show up with the sixth string and they think you're a guitar player, or you start doing little loops or something and people think that means you can't groove. So that's absolutely not the case. This is just a different side of me. And I just loved the idea of the sound, of the challenges it brings, not to be muddy and to kind of make it sound interesting. I'm a piano player from very little. And so tapping, two-handed tapping always kind of came easy to me because it's kind of like the piano. You just turn one hand over. And when I never sort of played these solo pieces to anybody, maybe at some odd NAMM show or something. And then I ran into my musical partner, Paul Hansen, who's an electric bassoonist, absolutely amazing musician. He plays bassoon. And we both kind of, were experimenting a little bit with the two bass instruments, really. We both read bass clef, although the bassoon has an insane range. And so we were experimenting a little bit, and I just pulled some of those ideas that I had kept under wraps out, and then Paul started doing stuff over it, and it's like, this is an interesting sound. So I took it from solo to duo, and then sometimes I take it back to solo, so depending. But yeah, I love dabbling with it, and Michael Manring has been a huge inspiration, also Stu Ham, and lots of those cats. So been fun, really
That's
fun.
awesome. That's awesome. That's a great story. Yeah, sometimes you got to figure out how to make it interesting, and certainly when you're playing by yourself, obviously being able to layer stuff is just, it can be addictive. You can want to do a lot a lot of
Right.
that. It's like, I
You
love
know,
that.
when I first started looping, I wanted to make songs. I didn't want to do just two bars and loop them and solo over it, right? So I had this. My first couple of arrangements were like these long parts where I would play an A section, the bass line, then the melody on the B section, then the C section I would do chords, and then when it came back around, I would do the opposite, like threading it back in. It became these insanely long pieces. So one of the tunes maybe I'll play later used to be one of those tunes, but then I kind of consolidated it because it takes a long time to get to the actual song. But it is an interesting challenge to even make that interesting. You have just
Yeah.
one line. How do you make that interesting? So
That's awesome. Well, we have a ton of people watching, a
cool.
lot of folks tuning in right now. And if you are just tuning in and just got the blast, we're sitting here talking with Ariane Cap from, amazing stuff that she's going to play. She's got 3 TrueFire courses that she has done. She's going to be playing some different stuff and doing a little bit of teaching. If you have any questions for her, feel free to put those in the chat, and we'll try to get to some questions later on, do a little Q&A. But in the meantime, let's play another tune. Let's do another song while we're rolling.
Tune. Okay, well, let me play that tune that I was talking about. That's going to be on the 6th string.
Sure, that sounds like a great segue.
And there's a funny story to that one.
Well, we're always up for funny stories here at TrueFire Live. That's what that's basically what keeps us going here.
Keeps us ignited. When I used to live in the Bay Area at my house, there were a huge amount of squirrels. And I had, we have all these wires, of course, I'm from Austria. I grew up in Austria, so I can never get used to all these wires that are going to houses. But anyways, there are all these wires, and the squirrels all day long are running this way and running that way and putting on a show and chasing each other and falling off the wires and sort of flying through the air. And I was playing with an African tune, with an African band at the time. They were actually called the Palm Wine Boys. They were fusing African palm wine music, which is an African high life music. That's a sit-down music, and it's actually really depressing lyrics, but very happy songs. And I was part of this wonderful band, the Palm Wine Boys. But you also hear the word boys in there, right? So that's a little bit of a hint to Appalachian and such. So it was a wonderful fuse of styles and just great musicians. And I sort of got inspired and a little bit into the African sounds. And this was a tune that I'm, watching all these squirrels going back and forth. And so when I'm playing it, maybe you can hear the squirrels running back and forth as we go to Africa here.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Nice job.
Thank
I
you.
could see the squirrels on the wire. I could see them while that was going
Okay.
on. That was perfectly named, right? An aptly named tune.
Yeah. I
Of
actually
course,
wrote that
doing
on the
more looper
upright.
stuff. So what are you using for a looper? What's your looper? What's the
My,
looper rig you got happening?
okay, I have a whole stack of infinities. I love their sound. And they have wonderful A-B options, so I can create a A section, I can create a B section. Their sound is just super clean. I really like that. A lot of loopers kind of dampen the sound a little bit, and that one is really great. I've had some troubles with jacks, unfortunately, so that's why I always bring 2 or 3 just in case one jack goes out a little bit. So, but they are wonderful. Small footprint too, and yeah, Infinity by Pentatonics.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, very cool. So let's, you've got 3 TrueFire courses
Yeah.
out right now.
Got 2 of them right here. I just got them in the mail.
There you go. You've got them. And we've got them pulled up there. So, the Pentatonic Playground for bass was, very cool course. The bass groove creation station. I love that. And I love the way you sort of think about grooves, and of course talk about grooves in all your course, even when it's,
Sure.
all 3 courses are groove oriented. But tell us how, kind of when you're sort of setting up a tune or when you're listening to a tune, where do you start to get that understanding of what's happening with the groove? Are you listening to, if it's a regular tune, a pop tune or a funk tune, are you listening to the drums? Are you listening to, more of the whole rhythm section that's going on without you and seeing where you fit in? Or how do you approach that?
Sure. I mean, first you want to know what the song is about. Is it a love song? Is it an energetic song? Is it modeled after something? Is it brand new? Do I have all the freedom in the world? Or is there some producer who has certain ideas, So you want to look at all that first to get an overview picture. And then places that I take my cues from are, I think, the arrangement. So I want to start out with, is there an intro section, verse, chorus? What can I as a bass player do to sort of underscore that story, because probably the lyrics are, verse tells the story, chorus is like the resolution, or bridge is like the big question or the quandary or something like that. So how can I as a bass player underscore that? And that may mean that, maybe I lay out, or maybe I play long notes, or I play, and then I like to think in terms of, range, because the range of the bass has a big impact on how the song is perceived. If I play higher up versus lower down, especially when I have the low string, you want to be placing that sparingly or just when it fits. But I think of range of the bass. I think of what I call spaciousness, like how busy would I play, or how non-busy, how open, maybe just long notes is what it called for, or nothing. And then when I go sort of drill down a little bit more, then I want to look at what the kick drum does, because we're similar in the sonic field. And I have 2 options. That's actually something I talk about in the groove creation course. I can either imitate, and I can, do what the kick drum does, at least in parts of the measure, maybe the beginning of the measure. That's always a good instinct. Sort of follow the kick drum in the beginning. Then when it goes to beat 3 and 4, I maybe have a little bit more freedom. Or I can do the opposite. I can play into the holes that the kick drum leaves and create something from that. So I think in the groove creation station, I do both. I give you a little groove section, and then I play off the kick drum, and then I leave space for the kick drum. So those are a few of the things that go through my head. Also, is it shuffled? Is it straight? What's the subdivision? What's the feel? And then, in the groove creation course, we also talk a lot about not just how to create your own grooves, but how to make it groove. And then things like subdivision and feel, come into play there.
Awesome. Awesome. Great answer. And if everyone that's tuning in and watching, if you all are digging this, if you are enjoying Ariane being here, please go click on the link underneath the video and go to the tip jar. You can drop a tip in there for her. 100% of that money will go directly to her. So if you're enjoying this, we sure appreciate her taking the time to come here, through the magic of the internet, and be here and share not only her artistic playing, but her knowledge and all that. So feel free to shout out any questions you have. For sure, drop a thumbs up and click that thumbs up button to show us that you're digging this, and stop by the tip jar and drop a tip in there. We've got people watching from all over the world. I'm going to shout out to Tommy in the studio. I believe Tommy is in the garage studio, and we're going to see where people are watching from. Tommy.
Yeah. It's actually, the weather is participating today, cooperating with us. It's not too warm yet, but here in Florida, it does get warm. Let's just talk about other locations around the world where maybe it isn't quite so warm yet. We've got Austin, Texas in the house, Michigan, London, Tampa, Indiana, Chicago, Belgrade, Serbia, Calgary, Alberta, Detroit, Ohio, Atlanta, Oakland, Trinidad and Tobago. Wow. Yakima, Washington, Hamburg, Lafayette, Colorado, Cape Town, South Africa. Very cool. That almost little reminiscent of that last little piece you played. That was awesome, by the way, with the squirrel sounds. Boston, Netherlands, Mannheim, Germany, Connecticut, France, Bogota, Colombia, Charleston, South Carolina, Las Vegas, Bonita, California. And on Facebook, we've got folks chiming in from Switzerland, Colombia, and Argentina. Just amazing, isn't it? These are crazy, very interesting times, but you have love from all over the world, Ariane. So very cool to see that, right?
Awesome.
Back to you, Jeff. Take it away, man. Absolutely. Good to see everyone chiming in, and got some cool questions. One person asked, and this is a question that I think is pretty cool. Sometimes we think about beginning students, and we think about somebody just starting, wanting to play bass. But the question was, any recommendations for sort of techniques and how to transition from guitar to bass? And I've seen that many times. Oftentimes, guitar players have trouble thinking like a bass player when they start playing bass. Right? They just sound like, we've all heard that. Most of us are guilty of that. Most of us guitar players of just sort of playing bass like a guitar, and you do the same thing. But what advice would you give a guitar player who wants to have better bass lines, when they play, instead of just picking up a bass and sounding like they're a guitar player?
Sure. So as for guitar players, it's actually funny because I get almost an email a week of somebody who says, I hope you don't mind, but I used to be a guitar player and now I switched to bass. And I'm like, we love guitar players. What's wrong with it? But I understand sort of the worry, because you're more groove oriented. You might be able to play very fast. And because you have the dexterity, you know where the notes are. It's easy to then just grab the bass and want to do the same thing. But of course, the function of the bass is quite different, because we have a duty towards the groove, and our most, and maybe also wedging in the question that you had about the beginner, the root on the one, that's always a really good place to start if you're just starting out, the root on the one. And what I would recommend both a beginner as well as somebody switching from guitar is to do a couple of technique exercises. There are some that I did, for example, in Pentatonic Playground. But some of my favorite technique exercises are these permutation exercises. They're essentially the Han on piano. It's the good old, you got 4 fingers and you permutate them in 24, I believe, the different options that you can do: 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 4, 3, and then on the bass, that looks just like this. And when you do that on a guitar versus on a bass, and you're gonna feel how the frets have a different layout and have a different feel, and you give yourself a really easy exercise like that. It may not feel so easy in the beginning, but it'll get there. And by doing that, you create mental space. You're not going to be like really thinking about the notes and the singer and the song and all of these other things that we always think about when we play just songs, right? And of course, we need to practice repertoire, no doubt. But if we do these kind of technique exercises, you really have mind free to listen to good tone. Am I, all the notes the same length? What happens exactly when is there a buzz? It gives me the freedom to think about these kind of details. So I recommend to everybody to just do like a couple of minutes. Doesn't have to be a ton. Later on you bring in the metronome, then you can go for speed. That gives you a lot of dexterity. These permutation exercises are great. And then we also make music out of them. We do all sorts of exercises in order to integrate them. But I think that'd be a good start, and to just listen to a lot of bass players. When you come from the guitar, you know how to listen, you know what to listen for. So listen to what the bass does. Bass players like Paul McCartney, maybe more melodic, or the whole funk department. They have different kind of idiosyncrasies in the grooves. So you want to start picking that up, and that just happens best by learning songs and listening and trying to imitate.
Awesome. Good answer.
Does the guitar teacher approve?
Yeah, absolutely. Very good. Good work.
Good.
We have another question. Somebody asked, who or what inspired you to start playing in the first place?
Necessity, actually. I was playing guitar and keyboards and singing in a band. And we were doing Doors and ZZ Top covers. And our bass player was on a trip and stayed longer than planned. And we had gigs on the books. And we needed to, get the show on the road. And I guess we auditioned a bunch of bass players. I guess nobody wanted to play with us because, we were just kind of starting out, having fun, And so some of the drummer said, well, you play guitar. How hard can it be? So I'm one of those guilty people, right? And I bought myself a red little Soundgear Ibanez and loved it, let it plugged in. And let the battery run dry. I went to the store like 2 weeks later. I'm like, what did you sell me? It's not working. So, yeah, that's my story. But I just loved it so much. And like a couple of weeks later, I played my first gig. I really
awesome.
never looked back. I just loved the grooving and the function of the bass and the low end and the, the whole, it's big and powerful. And I just loved it.
That's awesome. Awesome. Well, let's follow that story up with another tune. Let's play something. Let's see you play something big and powerful.
Okay, something big and powerful. Let me see. Well, I like opposites, and I'm definitely an obstinate person. Is that the right word? Because
Sure.
when you say big and powerful, I'm going to bring out the little guy,
I like it. I like it.
So, nonetheless powerful, but little.
Nice.
Yeah, this is my U-bass. This is a new one, and I love doing all sorts of things with my U-bass. So this is the first solo tune I've actually ever done on it, other than little groovy stuff. But I think in times like these, having a friend is a good thing. So here's a tune for that.
Yeah, that was indeed big and powerful from a small package. Sounded awesome. So tell us about that bass. What do you, tell us a little bit about that guy.
Well, it's a color U bass with the rubber strings, and it's a it's super fun to play because you can reach like I can almost reach 2 octaves. Look, I mean it's like nuts how far you can stretch, and so it gives you ideas, it gives you options. Yeah, it's I love the sound of it. Actually when you play walking bass, it almost sounds like an upright. And you can do all sorts of fun things with it. I love the fact you don't have to plug it in. You can just play. So whenever it's around, I'm just drawn to it. And yeah, it's really fun. You can even use it with. I'm going to show you this real quick. I'm using a delay pedal on this. Oh, that's not coming through because I'm plugged in the other thing. I won't do that because I need to rewire and such. So, anyways, but I when you tap it. It almost sounds like a synth bass. So, you can come up with some fun stuff with it. So
That's awesome. Awesome. So tell us about some of the other basses you're playing. Let's do a little gear talk here.
Oh, gears.
What else are you, give us your favorite couple basses you're playing.
Oh dear. I am a Marlo artist. So most of these beauties that you see back there are Marlo basses. The 2 models that you saw me play earlier, the 5-string and the 6-string, they are called Concert. They're super comfortable to play. They are very versatile. They have a most comfortable neck to me. It's, like butter. It just feels so comfortable. If you're more looking for a Fender type sound or a Fender style, then they have the Votans. I'll show you. I have 2 of those, and if you've watched my TrueFire courses, then you've seen this bass. This is an XS, and then I also have a regular Votan. They are a little bigger. That's that white one in the corner. And they have, they don't have 24 frets. They have actually 22 frets. It's a little bit unusual, but they're great for, funk and, slapping and that sort of thing. So that's those. And super happy to show off my newest addition to the family. That is a Contra. So it's semi-hollow. The upper part of the body is hollow here, so you can put your finger through here. And the bottom is just like a Concert, right? And it's single cut, so it's got a really strong tone and just a very warm sound. Wow. Yeah, it's just I love this bass. It's very new. I'm just still breaking it in. I bought it from a student of mine and who's switching to 4-string, so I was very happy to get a hold on it. So this one is the Marlo Contra. And then I have a beautiful fretless. Which is not a Marlo. This is a Fibonare bass. And the beautiful story with this bass, I was at a NAMM show and I jammed at a booth. And afterwards the guys come up to me and say, "You're amazing, you're wonderful, we want to build you a bass." And it was many, many years ago. And I was like my second, third NAMM show, something like that. And I was kind of like, yeah, sure. Next year comes around, they find me and they go, "Here, we got your bass." And they have this amazing 7-string bass. They say, "We want to give this to you." And I'm like, "Look, guys, I can do 6, but 7 is just too much for me. I don't want to take this and then not play it. You want this in the hands of somebody who plays it and, talks about your bass." And they say, "Okay, what would you need?" And I say, "Well, I don't have a fretless, Next year they come around and give me this, and it's just an amazing bass. The story goes, when you build a bass, you want to find just the right reverberations for the neck, apparently. So there's the piece of wood for the neck. They just knock, They look for where's the wood just right, that the notes would, speak the most. So apparently you hear it. I mean, that bass is just amazing. And yeah, that's a Fibonare. That's a Hungarian company. And I love this bass. And then, of course, I love the little guys. I got a little Marlo here. That's a soprano concert. The story about this bass is Gerald, the builder, Gerald Marlo, was putting together these advertising items, which is essentially a clock, like a clock for the wall, where he would take this body and put a clock in it, right, just as an ad. And one day he was looking at this thing, was like, I just might want to try to put some strings on it, And so the soprano bass was born. It's, of course, a play on words, soprano bass, right? And it's an octave up, and, it's got 24 frets all the way up there. It gets really tight to finger, but also a lot of fun. And then I have another Kala U bass. That one, that's an electric color. So that's essentially the family. And then I have you can see out of the corner there, you can see my Eminence upright. That's let's see if I can show you a little bit.
Very nice.
That's an electric upright, and then I have a real beautiful upright as well. An old one that I bought at a pawn shop and was really lucky.
Well, awesome. That is a good tour of your basses. So let's talk a little bit more about one of your TrueFire courses, your first TrueFire course, and let's just talk a little bit about Pentatonics.
Yeah.
Right? Maybe you can show us something from that course that would be sort of a good indication of kind of how you go about, getting students to think about Pentatonics in a little bit of a different way. That course is done really well. People love that course. There's so many good exercises and grooves and stuff in there, and just ways to think about it. So show us a little bit about kind of, how you think about Pentatonics when you're thinking about it from your perspective.
Yeah, happy to. I'm really happy with how this course turned out. So me and my partner Wolf put it together, and I think it's great because, Pentatonics is something that if you, oops, pedal is on. That's pentatonic, right? If you have, that's the guitar doing that, but still, pentatonics are, for the type of music we play, just incredibly important. And they're not just basic. You can use upper structure pentatonics, you can use pentatonics for soloing. I can, create Lydian sounds by playing D major pentatonic over C. There's so much you can do with pentatonics. It's such a cohesive sound that just lends itself really well to soloing, grooving, and it's just super important that we understand them, And the way I like to look at pentatonics is the fretboard is all about shapes. So pentatonic shapes, you can really literally see why the bass is tuned the way it's tuned, because you get, when I teach, I always want to do everything comprehensively. I want to do it in every area of the bass. I want to do it in every key. I want to make sure that I know my fretboard, not just from the root to the root, but I know all my scales. My scales, not just from the root to the root, but I know all the notes that belong to the scale, because that gives me much more freedom. So when I think of pentatonics, I divide it into 5 shapes, and that's really what that course is about. So this is the first shape that I call the hexagon, because it's got 6 corners to it, and then the second one I call the boot. My students call it the cleaver. I guess that's the woman's thinking, right? That's a boot, right? So the sole and the shaft here, and then here, this one I call big box, little box, and this one I call little box, big box. It just fits like puzzle pieces, And then here you've got the upside down boot, and then we're back around. So that gives you 5 shapes. And there is, if you know those, the box shapes, right? And a lot of people, they sort of use pentatonics, sort of, but don't really know where the root is. Is it major? Is it minor? How do you use it, in a groove? How do you use it in a fill? That sort of thing. And so that's what this course is about. And we go through all 5 shapes. We do them in G because they lie really well on the bass. Later on, I explain how to put that into different keys. I also go into technical exercises. These, may seem sort of easy. Pentatonics lie really great on the bass because you got 2 notes per string. So, 2 fingers right here, 2 notes per string. So there's a lot that is just nice technically. But we can do things, to make that harder. break them down in different ways, you know. And those are all these runs that when you practice them, then come out when you're grooving, when you're filling, when you're soloing. And so, yeah, I'm really happy with this course. It was the first one I did with you guys, and really, really happy about it.
Yeah. Well, I love it. I think it's a great course. Students love it. We just constantly get, emails from students that say that's really sort of, they appreciate how that course looks at the bass and looks at those patterns and shows them things in there that they weren't even thinking about. They didn't approach it that way before. So it's got a very foundational approach, but still a unique approach and something that's really necessary. So I want to talk about a couple of other things here too. And we've got folks still tuning in. Don't forget to do the check-in for the road trip. You got a chance of winning $100 if you just click on the link below the video where you can check in. And for sure, stop by the tip jar and leave Ariane a tip. We appreciate that. I'm sure she will as well in these difficult times that we live in right now, where musicians aren't out on the road as usual. 100% of that money will go directly to her. So stop by if you appreciate what she's doing here. You've got a lot of cool things going on. We've got all of your social links there below the video as well, so people can check you out on Instagram and Facebook and your website.
Awesome.
But I want to talk just a minute about your bass blog, because you do a lot of really cool stuff, and you've got this kind of neat community there in your bass blog. How long have you been doing the bass blog now?
I've been blogging since the same year my TrueFire course came out, actually around the same time that the course came out.
Gotcha.
In the fall of 2015, I self-published my book, Music Theory for the Bass Player, and the course with TrueFire came out, and I got a lot of correspondence. I got a lot of great questions, and honestly, it started with people asking me questions either about the course or the book, and I felt like, oh, that a lot of people could benefit from this answer, because I'm on email all day long. I want to help people out and answer, and so I would oftentimes just create blog posts out of those questions. And then I also started answering questions on Quora. That's a social media platform where people can ask questions. And so a lot of the writing just got a lot of great responses. And I decided I'm going to just do this regularly. I started with once every other week or something, and then I started pre-blogging, and now I'm really off to the races. I rarely miss a week. Sometimes it happens, but all sorts of questions, from bass to music theory to technique to how to practice. I'm also deeply involved in practice habits and coaching people to create habits. I'm a certified tiny habits coach, so I'm really interested in how I can help people access their full potential. Motivation isn't always high, so how can you get yourself to practice even if motivation is not high? So all of these questions really interest me.
Awesome. Well, good stuff. There's really good stuff, so everybody should definitely go check out the bass blog, because there's just a lot of good information. There's lots of lessons and lots of things you can definitely find something that you would be interested in there, I'm sure. So for sure, everyone check that out. Let's do another song. Let's see what we're doing on time. Yeah, let's do one more tune. Let's do another song.
One more tune. Okay, I'm gonna do one where I use my delay pedal.
Okay.
And how about we go way back in time? Here's some Bach for you.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. That was awesome. Amazing. Very, very cool.
Thank
So
you.
we've got a couple questions come in. Once someone said, how does one actually get their right hand to do that?
Oh,
So what do you have any good tips for tackling something like that?
sure. I mean, one thing I'm really big on is playing relaxed. So, when we start having tension, then we work against ourselves. So I do a lot of exercises and I teach a lot of exercises for letting go of tension, where oftentimes tension is so tricky because we're not aware of it. It's completely unconscious, right? But sometimes when you maybe see a video of yourself, you can see there's something pulling up here, or I used to always do this, my face was like, crunched up somehow. So, you want to teach yourself to let the music flow, because when the music can flow, then you can access your creativity on a whole other level, right? And sometimes, I mean, it's something that you can't completely iron out. When there's a sound thing, like just now, I felt my B string is distorting a little bit, it's irritating me, and I immediately feel my whole body just wants to go into, flight response. And that is, you can hear that in the tone because it starts choking the tone, So to teach yourself to play in a relaxed way really also gives you speed, because a lot of people, when they try to learn speed, they start, you can see it in their whole body. Like these permutation exercises that I mentioned earlier, they're great practice for speed, So you go, over time, you just go 10 clicks faster, and then finally you are at at a faster speed. And I see my students when they're trying to get to that, they do this, you're pulling up, you're trying to push, but you can't push through it. You have to let it come to you. So by learning how to play relaxed, and I do this with exercises. I mean, the question was about the right hand, but for the left hand, for example, one exercise I do is I just drop the hand. When I tell my students drop the hand, they often do this. They go, your hand is not dropped. I want that feeling of it being like, like a dead fish. If I moved your arm, then it would be just like no calories in there, right? Or sometimes they throw down the hand. That's not it either. So to just really go in there and feel the feeling of what it is to be relaxed, I find it easier to learn it on the left hand and then on the right hand. Another way in to help you get faster and nimble fingers is to practice very softly. Now, I love digging in, get me right. I love digging in and moving while I play and all of that. But if you get yourself to practice some things very softly, you will get your hand to make less movement. And too much movement is oftentimes what causes us to be late in time or to not be precise. So that's why I recommend practicing softly. So those are just a few of the tips I'd have.
Those are great. Those are great tips. Because someone else is asking, what do you do to keep your body in shape for playing? Do you have exercises or stretches that you do. And that's kind of what you're talking about, is some of those things. But I mean, I think that's important for you, right? Is basically making sure your technique is good enough so then you can relax and you can have control, right?
No, absolutely. And I would even go as far as, eating right, sleeping right, all of that informs your playing. We all know what it's like when we have an off night or something, we didn't get enough sleep or on tour or traveling or something. It really affects your playing because it's so intricate. You can hear the tension, or you can just hear it because it's so responsive. I also do, Victor Wooten taught me these exercises. They are actually martial arts exercises, and they strengthen your tendons. You stretch out your hands and you go really quick, open, close, open, close, open, close. So that's just one of many. I won't show all of them, but this is one that I love using for a warm-up. You do that. You're supposed to do it for 3 minutes, but after about a minute, your hand's about to fall off, But it's a really good one because it strengthens the tendons. And I learned that from Victor, so it's powerful.
That's a good one. That's a great one. And I think a lot of times that's something that everyone forgets about, is that there's more to it than just I'm learning this lick, but it's like how you hold your hands and your arms, and the position of, everything about your body is really important and feeds into your playing.
Totally.
We got one more question about just strings, right? The sort of a usual string question, but what's your thought or process about thinking about, what kind of strings you use on each of the different basses that you play?
Well, rubber strings and the little guy. I love Dean Markley SR2000s, and I use those on all my basses. The reason why I love them is, I think that's why they sound so great, is they are tapered. I don't know if you can see this, but they get really skinny. Right here.
Oh, yeah.
So they get real skinny, and because of that, there's only very little material that actually touches the bridge. And I believe that that's the reason why, for one, you might get a little bit of a more comfortable setup out of the bass. I think, I don't play too low, but for tapping specifically, I like sort of the strings not too far away, so you can set them up better, just right. And the other reason, I think, is that they just sound, they have more clarity, more sonority. I don't really know how it works, but it seems to have to do with the tapering back here. They do. The problem is, though, you break E and A strings because they tend to sometimes break down there at the skinny end. So that's the one drawback of them. But I absolutely love them. SR2000s, they are even hard to get sometimes. Strings.com, I think, has them. On my website, I list on arispaceblock.com under resources. I list exactly what I use for which bass. I use a little bit thinner gauges for my 6-string, and because I mostly tap and chord there, so I don't need that much juice that I would need for the grooving, and so that's a nice compromise to use little thinner ones there. But yeah, those are my favorite strings.
Awesome. Very cool. So once again, thank you so much for being here. For everyone that's watching, we appreciate you guys tuning in. Stop by, drop a tip in the tip jar. So you can find the link to that right below the video here. Give Ariane a tip for being here. We appreciate her being here and sharing her knowledge and her love for the instrument and playing. And of course, appreciate her being a part of the TrueFire family. Hopefully we'll get back to being able to get together in person again. It's kind of a tough time for musicians, but it's going to get better, and we'll all get together again. Everyone, make sure you click that thumbs up button if you haven't. There's no reason not to do that. You should do that, and check in for the road trip. But wanted to just say once again, thank you for being here and sharing with us. So how about we play one more song and we'll play you out. So that would be an awesome way to end this. We started with some music, and let's play a song here on the way out.
Sounds good.
Bravo.
Very nice. Thank you so much once again.
Last tune.
Well, we appreciate you being here, and we look forward to seeing you again soon.
Sounds great. Thank you for having me.
Thanks.
Looking
Absolutely.
forward to catch Andrew now. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks. Tommy, let's roll some video of our next artist as they're coming on.
Let's do it.
Oh yeah, the lowdown throwdown just keeps rolling on here at TrueFire Live, man. I tell you, it's good stuff. Welcome to everybody that's watching, that you were just got done watching Ariane Cap do some amazing stuff, and the amazing keeps going with our next artist that you've been watching is basically our good friend, Mr. Andrew Ford. What's up, buddy?
Hey, Jeff. How are you, man?
I'm doing great, man. How you been doing?
I've been doing all right, hanging with the craziness that we're dealing with, but been all right.
It's good, man. Well, it's great to see you. I'm glad you're here. We've done so many courses together. We've done a lot of things, and certainly had plans to do even more right now. And then we kind of get shut down. So hopefully we'll be back to normal, and we'll be doing some more stuff here with you as well. So, but we're glad to have you here. We got people tuning in from all around the world. If you're just stopping by, make sure you drop in the chat where you're from. Do you hit the check-in for the road trip, and the tip jar is open once again. But man, I tell you, we're excited to have you play some stuff. you've done things for TrueFire for several years now. I mean, you've got, I don't know how many courses, but you've got a lot of courses, right?
7, I think.
7 of them. So you've been
Yeah,
doing,
yeah,
you've
going
done
going.
7 courses. You know, I mean, everything from blues based to just all about the groove. I think it's something that you've done some very cool stuff with Motown stuff and just a lot of different reggae bass. I mean, you've covered a lot of ground in your courses, and your courses always do well. They're always student favorites. I mean, students love, you know, once again, you're another cat that's not only a great player, but you just have a good way of teaching, you know, and it's a very warm and friendly way of teaching that I think students really relate to. So that's something that we've, you know, obviously love having you do stuff with TrueFire. And like I say, we hope to do more, but I think you're going to play some stuff for us. And we're going to play a little bit and we're going to talk a little bit about playing and technique. If anyone has any questions for Andrew, you can drop those in the chat. But let's start off with the tune, man. If you feel like playing, let's play something.
Yeah, I guess I'll start off with this it's this rumba style blues that I did in my blues survival guide course, but it kind of alternates me. I didn't do this on the video, on the course video, but it kind of alternates me playing the solo role versus doing like the rhythm section, you know, supportive role. And so kind of switching hats, doing those two things, and I kind of do some half step, kind of connecting note things in there, and you know. But let's check it out.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, that is groovy.
Very groovy.
That's awesome, man. So I dig the, something you mentioned there, sort of doing the slurs and those half steps to make things a little more melodic, right? That's something you really think about, and you do a great job of that. But how do you approach that? How do you make a bass line? If you said, I want to make this bass line a little more melodic, what would you suggest to get to that point?
What's different approaches to that? Sometimes it's like non-chord notes, like like basically as bass players, they're used to us playing the one. Of course, the root is the foundation, and the five, those couple things. But when you get away from that, start playing like the third and like the ninth, and even stuff like a chromatic things that are not in the chord, like the half step. When you're in G, using F sharp, or if you're in G, like using the B flat to go to B. Things that aren't necessarily in the chord, but just kind of, you don't want to overdo it because your role is playing, is being the foundation. But throwing some of this stuff in there could be nice, nice and flavorful.
Nice way to sort of spice things up a little bit, make it a little, keep it like you say, the foundation, but make it a little more interesting.
Absolutely.
It's awesome, man. So you've been busy, you've been doing stuff. So you've got a new CD, right? You got a new CD that's going to be coming out.
Yeah, I'm working on it, man. I've been debating it for years because as my primarily my role, like as a bass player, my career as a bass player, let me say, it's been like be foundation. I mean, I used to even hate that term of like some of my past employers have kind of use terms like the Rock of Gibraltar, David Crosby used stuff, and it started like bothering me because it's like, man, I mean, I like being the foundation, but it just seems kind of boring. Is that all I do? And so so as doing a solo record, I was thinking I don't play like a lot of soloistic kind of things, and so I was like, should I even do a solo record? But over the years, I've kind of gotten discovered this gift of songwriting and so that's really what I'm featuring on my CD is really my songs, my bass playing too, but more as foundation as a role player, but mostly the songs and the arrangements, lyrics, stuff like that. So that's what the CD is about. So I'm going to be releasing a single hopefully like in a month or so.
Awesome. Well, very cool, man. We'll definitely have everybody stay tuned for that and check it out. Looking forward to it for sure. Let's play another tune. Well, while we're rolling, man, if you want to play another song.
Yeah. I have this groove. Let me see. I have this James Brown kind of Sex Machine type groove.
Yeah.
And it's just one chord. So like a lot of times, you think like one chord is boring kind of thing, but there's things you could do even within one chord to kind of make an instrument interesting. And granted, all this stuff I play. Really, when a vocal is involved, that kind of changes everything up, so everything is dependent on the vocal or the melodic, the solo instrument, whatever's playing the melody. So it's all subject to change. But there's things you can do within one chord. So specifically, I'm going to be like doing this eighth note pattern, kind of like Sex Machine. But I'm going to be displacing it, like for interest, kind of starting on the one, started on the two, started on the three, or started on B4. And also in this, there's like a way, as a bass player, we have a lot of power to kind of reharmonize things in a way. I call it reharmonize. It's not really reharmonizing, but it's like using different bass notes other than the root to kind of change the flavor. Now this is more effective when you don't have like, whether it's a piano player or guitar player or both. But if you don't have them playing heavy in the bass, if they're doing that, it kind of makes it less effective. Like for instance, even on this track, the guitar player is kind of playing heavier on the root, so it's not as effective. But in most situations, you can go to the 5, or you have a lot of power as bass player to kind of, change the harmony, change the dynamic of stuff. So I'm gonna try to do some of that as well as the eighth note stuff.
Nice, man. That's awesome. So when you're doing that, when you've got the groove going, you know, how do you approach putting the little licks in between and the little fills and stuff? You know, how were you thinking about that when you know, sort of branch off from there? Where are you pulling that, that sort of information from for yourself?
Well, it's interesting. It's a lot of it's from listening to enough of this kind of music and listening, and not only listening because I had heard this song. For instance, this song, "Sex Machine" from James Brown. I had heard it, you know, probably hundreds of times. But until I really started listening to what the bass player was playing and analyzing and really trying to copy, emulate what he was doing, you don't notice the subtleties. And so even though I'd heard the song a lot, I really hadn't internalized like the subtleties of the song. And so once you start doing that, you know, I just noticed that even like say with those octaves. I mean, you're just playing octaves, but he was varying them up like each time, just like created this whole flavor. It just wasn't the same. You know, a lot of times you hear guys playing, they'll just get and play that the whole and play that the whole song. You know, he wasn't doing that. You know, he was varying up. So until you like, so that's like my thing really to kind of, and really from doing videos for TrueFire really kind of ignited that. Just really finding out what the subtleties are in the music and the little small details, because that exists in every kind of music. So and that's why you'll see like some guys I feel like only kind of get a surface level. They think they understand maybe rock. So it's just eighth notes, right? No, there's like subtleties to like the style of music that you know you have to discover. And so that's where that comes from. As far as you know, I kind of really checked out what the bass player on those Bootsy Collins at one point, I think Fred Thomas maybe, but there was different versions of it. But the way they were approaching it and just kind of digging in and just internalizing that, you know, is kind of where so ideas come from, you know, emulating those guys.
That's great, man. Good answer for sure. For everyone that's tuning in right now and just stopping by, make sure you click the thumbs up if you're digging this. Also, if you like this and you appreciate Andrew being here this afternoon with us and sharing his knowledge, go by the tip jar for sure. Click on the button to go by the tip jar, tip jar, whatever that jar is. Drop a tip in there. All of that money goes directly to Andrew, every dime. Nobody else takes any, so it's all going to go to him. So if you appreciate that, what he's doing here, drop in and put a tip down. We appreciate it as well. We sure love the fact that he is here. Make sure you check in for the road trip and drop in any questions you might have. We'll try to get to a few questions later. We got a lot of playing we're going to do, but we'll get to a few questions later and be able to go over some stuff. I know one thing that you and I, man, have been talking about here for a while is your channel, your TrueFire channel that you've been working on, that is getting ready to come out soon, Grooveology, right? And
Right.
excited, man. I'm excited to see that come about because I know you have just a lot of cool ideas and ways to look at groove, you know, and how to help people with that. And I think the channel is going to be a really cool place for any bass player that wants to sort of up their level of groove to be able to, you know, jump in and do it. So tell us a little bit about that, about kind of how you're approaching that and some of the stuff you want to share in there.
Well, I mean, it's been taking longer than I thought because I really want it to be a place where guys are really helped, and that I present some information that's helpful to people, and find some new ways to get them to discover ways to approach groove. And the groove is, I mean, I heard on one of the broadcasts the other day somebody asked about the definition of groove or something. And I was like, yeah, wow, it's the definition of groove. And I've heard that question before, but it's like I mean, what I kind of got out of that was it's like the feel, just it's a feeling. Like it evolved from like groovy. Like I think it was a term kind of used in the 30s or 40s, groovy, and even with Paul Simon, um, Simon and Garfunkel, the what was the song, Feeling Groovy, Feeling Groovy. So it was a thing in the 60s too. But it was like a good feel, a feeling. And so I mean, there's that to every style of music. There's like this feel, and like what I talked about earlier with the subtleties in every groove or in every style of music. I think learning those kind of helps you to make things feel groovy. Makes every style of, whether it's jazz, Latin thing, which I'm about to do in a second, or blues, or funk, or rock, or country, or whatever. They all have their kind of their groove and feel. And so that's what the channel is going to be about, kind of making things, how things groove. Hopefully it'll be a fun thing for people and have some things that people can use.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, while we're talking about some grooves, let's talk a little bit about Latin grooves, and let's have you play something, man. Let's play a tune about that, because I think that's something that man, you have a great feel for that, and a good understanding of that. So let's talk about it a little bit and play it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, this is an interesting one because this was like this groove was something in my first bass survival guide video, and it was the video on YouTube that kind of it was the most controversial and got the most views out of all my views. So it's like I was like, wow, But I think they were kind of intrigued, probably one because a black guy was playing, Latin style of music like that, or like I go at one point I go into this slap bass style, which kind of was based on there's a bass player Sal Cuevas, who recently passed away. I think he passed away a couple years ago. That introduced I think he was going to introduce like the slap bass style of playing salsa music. So I think guys were debating on YouTube about it and learning it and intrigued, and I didn't really get it. But I think part of that is because like learning a style of music that you didn't grow up with. I mean, it's possible, but you just have to dig in. Like if you grew up playing this type of music, it's like kind of second nature. I mean, not like there's not still things that can be learned from it, even if you grew up with it. But it's natural to you. For me, I didn't grow up playing salsa music, so it was like a learning thing. And so even today, still, I mean, I'm fortunate enough to get to play with some groups here in town that are the guys that grew up playing that style of music. So there's nothing like that. For one, getting to play with guys that are better than you at whatever style or whatever level. But I mean, that's one thing that helped me, period, overall, just getting the opportunity to play with guys that are better than you. So particularly this style, it was learning kind of not playing on one, because like normally, it's like it's like most popular music, is based on, your bass player plays on one. This, I mean, basically, you're playing on the and of 2 and 4, 1 and 2, 1 and 2, 1, 2, and 4, 1, 2. So it's a whole different mindset of listening, and then there's a whole swing kind of to every music. Every music swings kind of in a different way. So it was learning like the Latin swing, and so by no means have I mastered it, but I've just spent a lot of time just kind of diving into it, listening to the greats play it, playing it not only with tracks, but playing it even isolated, like we're going to talk about later, playing things with just a click, just to kind of isolate any problems that you may have in your groove or in your playing. But so this is the thing that is basically in C. Even the guys would debate about like, you know, he says it's 5-4-1. What does that mean? Da, 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 da. You know, no, it means this. Da, da. Well, it's starting with the 5 chord, going to the 4. So this is in C. So starting with the 5 chord, which is G, going to the 4 chord, which is F, and then landing on the root, which is C. You know, so that's basically the chord pattern. You're playing around a clave, something that's called a clave, which is a rhythm that's used in Latin style music, and it's this particular clave is a 2-3, which is there's 2 parts. This is a 2-bar phrase. There's a 2 side and there's a 3 side. So this one is the 2 side is in bar 1. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 4, 1, 2, 3. So that's the clave kind of pattern that you're playing around. So that's kind of everything has to kind of be, you know, go around the clave. So this is this. So I'm gonna start with a basic pattern, then I'm gonna go to a little busier pattern, and then I'm gonna go to like the slap bass thing, like using the tenths, you know, the major third. So let's see if I can get to this thing. Here we go.
Very nice.
Yeah, very cool, man. So that's really showcases another really cool thing about your playing, and the sort of way you think about groove is the variations in tone that you're getting just by how you're playing, right? You do the real muted thing, you know, but then you kind of got the slap thing, and it really mixes it up, playing over the same thing, but you're creating that different feel. So along those lines, I mean, how do you think about that when you're playing, as far as what's needed, you know, and especially the muted stuff, the muted thing you do, you know, you do that really well and seem to have a good feel for when to mute those notes, and just, you know, talk a little bit about that. Show us how you approach that.
Well, I mean, it's something that really developed over time and through seasoning. I mean, the muted thing, it's a good way to kind of create space, I think, for other instruments. And so I think even like when I'm playing with a singer, you know, or a ballad or something where it just needs a more subtle part or a more spatial, you know, I mean, just kind of leave space for other instruments. So it's basically, I mean, when I use it, depends on the situation, like in the song. You know, I'm serving the song, whatever like it takes to serve the song. So you know, whether that's more a muted pattern or whether it's become needs to dynamically rise up, maybe in the chorus or something. So I maybe go to fingers or more longer the thing, or if it goes to a more intense part of the song, you know, where I need. You know, you create, you know, so dynamics are everything for me, like in a song, especially if you're playing with singers and playing that kind of music. I mean, that up and down, you know, how it brings people, it moves people. I mean, that's what moves people is really dynamics. If you're just playing like one volume like the whole time, I mean, that could kind of be cool too, I guess, in its own thing. But for the most part, I mean, I think people are moved by, you know, dynamics, you know, how things breathe, and even not be afraid of space, you know, because a lot of times I think we want to fill up every space in a bass line or in a song, you know, wherever the space you want to jump in there and play a part. Sometimes, I mean, just let space be there. So that's kind of how I look at it, just from playing with singers, trying to give space for the vocal, for the lyric, trying to serve the song, you know. So yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. So certainly good points. And if anybody wants to, you know, dig in deeper with you, I not only are you going to be doing the channel coming up, but you're going to be doing some private lessons as well at TrueFire. So something we've been talking about too, and you know, getting you doing all of those cool things coming up soon.
Yeah, I know I've talked to a couple guys that maybe wanted some help with their groove and that type of thing, but they didn't want to do the Skype thing necessarily. So I told them about, you know, the TrueFire thing coming up, and so I'm excited about it too. And while I'm thinking about it, shout out to Robin Ford and Larry Carlton. They are really the guys that got me hooked up with TrueFire. You know, Brad, Tommy, Jeff, you guys. So shout out to those guys because I mean, there's like we all have these talents. I think that some of them are undiscovered maybe, and you know, I didn't know. I mean, my background was in education. I have a master's degree in education, so I know that side of things and preparing lesson plans and all that kind of stuff. But combining the two, bass with education, I hadn't really thought about as much. But you know, apparently Robin and Larry saw something, and so I'm thankful to those guys.
Well, yeah, for sure. They are huge fans of yours, as we are, and we thank those guys for recommending you as well. Because, like I say, you've done all these different courses. You know, like I say, the reggae bass, the rock bass, Motown. Just going through your stuff here, blues bass. I mean, you cover all the bases, so to speak. And
Wow.
sorry, that was just laying right in front of me. I
Nicely
couldn't
done.
pass that
Nice.
one up. But you know, you do so many different styles and everything. So do you have a favorite style, right, man? So if somebody said, look, you can only play one kind of style from now on, we're going to limit you. Where would you land there? What would you play?
Man, that would be tough for me. That's a great question. Um, I mean, obviously, I mean, I kind of came up with, you know, R&B, blues, soul type music, but you know, quickly got introduced to jazz and rock, and then later with the all the other styles of music. You know, Brazilian style music has been one of my favorites lately that I just love doing and kind of giving my take on it. Um, so that would be a tough one. I mean, I love James Jamerson. To me, is kind of my favorite bass player. So I guess it would have to be something, you know, James Jamerson like, you know, which is Motown. I mean, he's Motown, but still, I mean, I have so many tastes, so many very tastes that would be
All right. Well, we're
a
not gonna
story.
make you pick. We're gonna
Yeah,
let you do
don't
them
do
all. All
that.
right.
Thank you. Let me off the hook.
um, so let's do it. Let's do another tune while we're rolling here. Let's do get into this next tune and talk a little bit about it, kind of the concept, that you're going to do here, and we'll go through this tune.
Well, before we do a tune, I have this thing that hopefully may help somebody. Let me get back, start that over again. It's basically like dealing with the click, and so whether you're, a lot of people are introduced to the click with the metronome. They're asked to play scales with the metronome, and they learn to hate the metronome, and it confines them, and puts them in a box and makes them, and so it's learning to kind of appreciate the click or the metronome and just kind of embrace that and make that become one with your playing. Because what happens is, and I even still to this day will use it, like maybe if I'm rehearsing for a tour or something, and I'm learning a bass line, and I want to know if I really have it. If I really have it, then I can just play it with the click. And not only play it with the click, but playing with the click, playing on 2 and 4 versus like every quarter note, 1, click, click, click. Just playing on 2 and 4. And so if I could play it and make it groove with just that 2 and 4, then I think the other guys in the band will love you when you come back, when you all get together, because it's like your groove will already be so solid, it will do nothing but enhance like the whole band situation. The drummer won't have to feel like he's kind of pulling you back or slowing you down or whatever. And your groove internally will be so powerful that it will, like I said, only enhance. You'll know that you really have it. And so that's how I use the click. And so I'm just gonna play the click, the boring little click here. I'm gonna play it, and first it's just gonna be quarter notes, but then I'm gonna turn it around. I'll do this with students sometimes, have them listen to a quarter note click, and then turn it around to where you're hearing the click on 2 and 4. And so I'm gonna do that, and check it out. Okay. So this is like a slow 4 kind of 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Okay, so that's the click. So I'm gonna turn around. I'm gonna start hearing this click, same click on 2 and 4. So instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, I'm hearing 2, 4, 1, 2, 4, 2. Yeah, so the click could be, I mean, it's not like it's more musical when it's on 2 and 4, like a drummer. So
Yeah.
it feels like more like a drummer. So it's more fun to play to versus clap, 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 clap. So, and there's more space though in there. So you got to be careful with you don't have all the in between stuff that the drummer's doing to kind of hold you back. And so it helps you to develop your internal time so you're not dependent on that. So that's the best thing. I mean, a lot of people look to the drummer to be, the timekeeper, and to hold everybody back. Like I'll be in sessions sometimes where, well, a lot of times where people, other people other than the drummer, sometimes don't want to hear the click. The click is kind of messing them up, messing up their groove, and I get that. But the thing is that everybody, if you don't listen to the click, if you don't have the click in your ears, you better make sure that you're playing with the drummer or somebody that does have the click, because that's the thing. When you don't have it, your tendency is to rush, be lazy with the whatever it is. So the click is so learning to love the click and embrace it and make it a part of you is very helpful.
That's, yeah, very helpful. And I definitely think it really helps do what you said, which it leaves a little space there for you. So you're right. You really have to be careful of that when you're just thinking that click on 2 and 4, but it also allows you the freedom to, feel that click. And yeah, I've heard that line that guys say, the click is messing with my groove before. And I like you, I get that. I also, occasionally want to reply, well, maybe that's the problem. Maybe. So,
Yeah,
but yeah, that's a great way of looking at it.
Yeah, there's a lot of great guys too that they're okay with not hearing the click, and they're great at playing with the drummer, and they have great internal time already. So there's guys that they can do that. But if you're not one of those guys, you best listen to a little bit of that click in your ear so that you can know where the time is.
Better safe than sorry, right?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, your TrueFire courses, you've done so much, like the bass groove survival guide. I mean, was all about sort of that kind of stuff and thinking about, how to play those grooves, man. And that's, I think that's, even as you said before, you're known for, being able to hold down that solid foundation. And even if that maybe drive you crazy sometimes, that's a really important part of it. And I think especially for new players, new bass players, that sometimes forget that, without the groove and without having that together, then everything else they're going to want to do is not, it's not really going to be very solid. So you got to get that down,
Yeah, I mean, and that's what I love about guys that can play the groove, but when it's time to shine, then it really comes alive. I mean, it's even more special when you do get that solo spot. But if you're soloing throughout the whole tune, it's like it's nothing special. It's like you've been doing it the whole time. So it's like, okay, it's just only now people are dropping out, but it's the same thing you've been doing the whole song. So,
right.
So I mean, it's that, but like even in the first blues, the rumba I did initially, the first tune I did, I mean, it's switching hats from like playing as a rhythm section guy to playing a solo, and having a soloistic kind of view, which is more of playing melodies and stuff like a lot of times the bass players were not used to doing, like digging into grabbing a fake book and just kind of playing tunes or playing melodies. It's something that bass players that start off on guitar maybe are more used to, because they're more, like even, Paul McCartney is one of my favorite bass players, but he's a lot of times on those tunes, it was like really not a bass approach to stuff, a normal, typical bass approach to stuff. I mean, it was more melodic, and he was playing more like melodic lines versus playing the normal, just sticking on the root and that kind of thing. So there's switching hats from playing just the root and fifth and that type of thing to playing as a soloist, maybe playing using the 6 and the 2 and the 3, all those notes that you're not normally playing as when you're playing the foundation role.
Well, that's awesome, man. So I think that really says a lot for just like I say, the way you think about teaching is really it's a good a broad way for guys to sort of understand the groove and what needs to happen. With a lot of people tuning in from all over the place. We got Arizona, Brazil, Chicago, over in the UK, people watching from all over, and we really appreciate that. And if you're enjoying this, make sure you stop by, drop Andrew a tip, and go to the check-in. And if you check in there for the TrueFire road trip, if you click on that and check in, you'll be entered to win $100 TrueFire gift certificate. So for sure, if you're watching, go do that, because you will be entered in that. And I believe we're going to draw that, I think, at the end of the show here.
That's
So
right.
we'll be doing that. Make sure you click the thumbs up. If you've got any questions, we'll try to get at some questions. Definitely want to get a couple more jams in, do a little play in here. So let's do that now. Let's do a song. Let's do a tune. If you're up for that, man. You want to play something?
Yeah, I have this tune that was also on my Blues Survival Guide course called Rob's Road. It's like a Clapton style blues, like with this unison line. And so, you know, bass players, when we're playing unison lines, again, like being used to playing melodies, I mean, if you could make those more expressive, you know, by using little, you know, or slurs or half stote. You know, little stuff like that kind of makes the line more melodic. And so, especially, like I said, if you're playing things unison. So this one has a couple things in it. It has like what's called a quick four, you know, that goes to the four chord. It's in A, but it goes to the D, the four chord in the second bar. So it goes like, you know, it's a quick change. I mean, people call it different things. But it's, as a bass player, you know, you really need to, like if you're just jamming with guys, you need to listen for that, because there's no like rhyme or reason or regular pattern of it. But it's like sometimes guys will go to the quick four, and sometimes they'll just stay on the one for the first four bars. But you got to be listening, you know, for that. So that's like if you're jamming, or just, you know, there's numerous times where I have to, you know, jump on that four real quick, because that's where whether it's the keyboard player or guitar player, if they go there, you need to be with them. So they listen for that quick four. This one has a quick four in it, and it also has a thing like when it gets back to the four, you know, in bar 9 or 10, instead of just going to the root, it goes to like the major third, which is F sharp. Instead of D, it plays F sharp, which gives a little tension for a minute. Then it goes back to the D, just kind of, you know, so there. So that tension though is great. I mean, it creates a different thing than a normal, you know, regular 12-bar blues thing. So yeah, this is right, and my friend Mick Taurus is playing guitar on there. He played on the first tune also, but here it is.
That's good stuff, man. Good stuff. So that's a thing, kind of like you said, that you sometimes, if you're in a trio, you are you're allowed to, or maybe even required to play more busy and fill space, versus if you're playing in a band with a keyboard player and a horn section and a lot of other things going on, then you got to kind of pick your spot a little bit more carefully, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I learned that lesson, with one of the times that was magnified was with Robin. When I started off with Robin, the great Greg Matheson was playing keyboards. He was playing B3, and it was great. I mean, Greg is the best. And but then Robin started doing some trio gigs, and that took a whole different mind shift, of playing the same songs, but approaching them in a different way because there was so much more space, So yeah, so there's so you play what's required. I mean, so if you're able to, of course, with your technical skills and your facility and all that stuff, all the better that you can. And if you're used to hearing it, that's the other thing. I mean, again, it goes back to being able to know what it's supposed to sound like, and if you know what busy, good and busy sounds like, if you know what sparse sounds like, then and what's still grooving in each case, then you're able to adapt in whatever style of whatever situation you find yourself in the combination, play what's required and busy it up if you need to busy it up. And it's like I saw this video description of a rhythm section, and the guy started off with just acoustic guitar, and he was playing acoustic guitar, and he was trying to cover the song with just acoustic guitar, and he had to play all the stuff. And he had to play bass, he had to play rhythms, he had to play, and so then of course he got a drummer, and so then he had to play less, less of the constant eighth note parts. Maybe they was playing the hi-hat. So then he got a bass player, so he didn't have to play as many low notes. And so his role shifted each time that he added another person to the group. So
Sure.
that's kind of same thing, like as a bass player approach stuff different depending on the music as far as the musicians.
Right, right, absolutely. Let the situation dictate what you're going to play. So you have to be
Absolutely.
aware of that,
Yeah. Like I said, it goes back to just playing what's required, playing the song. But you don't know that if you hadn't listened to enough of that style of music to really internalize it and know what it's supposed to sound like.
Sure.
Even with something like blues, I mean, I grew up with blues, but I didn't grow up necessarily playing blues music. So, but when I started playing with Robin, that took me to another level. I could play a shuffle, and I knew what a shuffle felt like to play to on the shuffle. But I think there's always higher levels to get to. I mean, we've never arrived, and so I kind of learned all kind of stuff, and even about four-string bass. I mean, I was playing up until that time. I was playing probably a lot of mostly five-string bass. For probably a good 15, 20 years of my career, playing mostly five-string. When I started playing with Robin, I went to the four just because it was, kind of more rootsy and all that kind of stuff. Not that it's any better, 5, 6, 4. But so I was playing four with Robin, and then there was one time where he, I don't remember why I brought the five string out one time, but he looked at it and was like, "Wow, what's that?" Kind of like, what? I thought, why do you bring that? And so it kind of like woke me up to like that. I found my thing kind of using the four string bass, definitely in that context, so yeah, there's always other levels of learning and growing. And probably from that time on, I've kind of focused on more on the four string bass than five string.
Sure. So hey, we got. I know we've been playing more. We've been taking questions, but we got a question from Jason. Question from Jason is, how do you keep bass fun and interesting when you're practicing at home? When you're just practicing at home, how do you make it fun?
Wow. Well, one of the ways I kind of make it fun is that again, playing with that click, I think it makes it more musical if you can use that as two and four, and like it's a drummer, and you could like take your favorite song that you've learned, whatever bass line that is, and if you could play it with, pretend you're playing with a drummer, and the challenge of just kind of playing it using that two and four, and not needing, and just kind of, seeing how good, how you progress playing that line and making it feel good over just a 2 and 4 click. I mean, that's one way. I mean, another thing I do is I use a program called shoot, I forget what it's called, but there's a few different programs that do it. But they actually EQ the bass out of a track, and so that's a good way also of instead of just playing along with the song, and the bass is already in there, you could EQ the bass out, and then it's just like you're the, and it'll take some of the EQ out of some of the other instruments, but it doesn't affect it that much, and so that kind of makes it more fun because you're the bass player. And a lot of times, again, when I'm learning songs for, I sub in Shaka Khan's band occasionally for the great Melvin Davis, and when I'm learning something new from her, I'll normally put it through this program and take out the bass, and so I could hear it's like me playing along with Shaka's band. So when you get there, because a lot of times in those kind of situations, there's no, with Shaka, there's just a sound check, and she doesn't go to the sound check. So it's like the first time you see her, it's like the downbeat of the first song. So you got to be happening from beat one, and sound like the last guy that has been doing it the whole time, and so as close as possible. And so so doing that thing, EQing out the bass, kind of allows you to feel like you're actually playing in the band.
Awesome, very cool. So let's I believe we've got a winner. Our $100 gift certificate winner is Doc Stefan. So Doc Stefan,
yeah, congrats.
Very cool, Doc. You just got yourself $100. So thanks for stopping by, and certainly thanks to everyone for watching this afternoon. Before you leave this whole show, make sure you go and stop by the tip jar. Drop a tip in there for Andrew. We appreciate that. And 100% of that will go directly to him. So it's very cool. Andrew, we appreciate you being here. As always, brother, love you, and hope you can get down to the studio and do some recording. I know we're going to be doing some new stuff. We've got a cool funk thing. We've got a lot of stuff coming up, and we may have to do another one of these live things just so we can go through more of it.
Yeah, man.
But we appreciate you being here, man. So let's play another tune on the way out. Let's have you take us out with the song. I mean, whatever you got lined up, let's jam it out on the way out. What do you say?
All right, this is like another little one chord thing, kind of a Curtis Mayfield thing, but I'm kind of outlining this minor 9 chord. So I'm making that into a bass line and just kind of making that melodic and trying to doing some slides and some different stuff, but just a little one chord, little ditty. Let's check it out.
Thank you.